Can you give me a hug, please? 7 words. That was all it took. 7 words whispered by a stranger on an ordinary autumn afternoon, and everything Nathan Cole thought he knew about his carefully constructed life would shatter into 1,000 pieces. He did not know it yet, sitting on that bench outside the Copperleaf Cafe in Portland's Pearl District, nursing his black coffee and watching maple leaves spiral down onto the cobblestone sidewalk. He did not know that the desperate young woman approaching him would crack open wounds he thought had scarred over. He did not know that her simple, heartbreaking request would ignite a story neither of them saw coming. But that is how the best stories begin, is it not? Not with grand announcements or dramatic entrances. They begin with quiet moments, ordinary days, and the courage to reach out when everything inside you is screaming to stay invisible. This is a story about a desperate plea, a man who chose compassion over caution, and the miraculous thing that happens when 2 broken people decide to stop being alone. Before we continue, please tell us where in the world are you tuning in from? We love seeing how far our stories travel. It was one of those rare October afternoons where the sun broke through Portland's usual grey, painting everything gold. The kind of day that felt borrowed, stolen from summer's memory, and gifted to autumn as a parting kindness. Nathan sat on his favorite bench, the wooden slats worn smooth by years of strangers, seeking the same simple pleasure he sought, now a moment of peace. His daughter Rosie was inside the cafe having her weekly auntie day with his sister Beth, which meant he had exactly 30 minutes of blessed solitude. 30 minutes where no one would ask him about dinosaurs. 30 minutes where no one would wonder aloud whether clouds had feelings, or if fish got thirsty, or why the sky was blue, but water was clear when they were supposed to be the same thing. Nathan had learned to treasure these moments the way a man dying of thirst treasures water. Not because he did not love his daughter. God, he loved her more than he had ever known it was possible to love another human being. But single parenthood was a marathon with no finish line, and even marathon runners needed to catch their breath. He took a sip of his coffee. Black, no sugar. The same brand Claire used to buy, brewed the same way she used to make it every morning before her run. 3 years, and he still could not bring himself to change it. His grief counselor said that was normal. His grief counselor said a lot of things that sounded wise in her office, but dissolved into nothing at 3 in the morning when the house felt too big, too empty, too quiet. Today marked 3 years exactly. 3 years since Claire collapsed during her morning jog. 3 years since a neighbor found her on the sidewalk 3 blocks from their house, already gone. 3 years since sudden cardiac arrest from a congenital heart defect no one knew existed stole her from them without warning, without goodbye, without mercy. She was 31 years old, healthy, vibrant, training for a half marathon. One moment she was alive, laughing over breakfast planning Rosie's 3rd birthday party. The next moment she was just gone. Nathan became a single father overnight, drowning in grief while trying to explain to a confused toddler why Mummy was not coming home. Rosie was so little then. She kept setting a plate for Claire at dinner, kept asking when she could show Mummy her new drawings, kept wandering into the master bedroom looking for someone who would never be there again. The first year was a blur of survival. Wake up, make breakfast, drop Rosie at daycare, go to work at the rehabilitation center where he helped other people's children learn to walk again, to move again, to live again, all while feeling like he was dying inside. Pick up Rosie. Make dinner usually burnt or undercooked because Claire was the cook, and he had never bothered to learn. Bath time, bedtime stories. Then the long, empty hours until exhaustion finally dragged him under. He cried in the shower so Rosie would not hear. He lay awake at night, terrified that he was failing her, that he was not enough, that she would grow up broken, because he could not be both parents no matter how hard he tried. The other parents at school drop-off looked at him with that mixture of pity and admiration. The single dad. Capital letters like it was a title he had earned, rather than a sentence he was serving. He was the one who showed up with mismatched hair ribbons in Rosie's hair because he still had not mastered braids. The one who forgot it was pajama day and sent his daughter in regular clothes while every other kid wore their favorite sleepwear. The one who packed peanut butter sandwiches for weeks until another parent gently informed him that Rosie's classmate had a severe allergy and the whole classroom was supposed to be nut-free. Claire would have known. Claire knew everything about being a mother because she had been preparing for it her whole life. Nathan was just making it up as he went along, hoping he did not mess it up too badly, hoping Rosie would not look back someday and see all the ways he had fallen short. Is this living? He sometimes wondered. Or just surviving. The smell of roasted coffee beans drifted from the cafe, mingling with the earthy scent of fallen leaves. A young couple laughed over their lattes through the window, their hands intertwined on the small table between them. Nathan looked away. The familiar ache pressed against his ribs like a bruise that never quite healed. He checked his watch. 22 minutes of solitude remaining. He should enjoy it. He should sit here in this borrowed sunshine and feel grateful for what he had: a healthy daughter, a steady job, a sister who loved them both enough to give him these small reprieves. But gratitude felt like a language he had forgotten how to speak. That is when he sensed someone standing beside him. Close. Too close for a stranger. The kind of proximity that made the hairs on the back of his neck stand up, that ancient instinct warning of intrusion into personal space. Nathan turned, and everything changed. A young woman stood there, and the first thing Nathan noticed was how thin she was. Fragile, like she might blow away with the next gust of wind, scattered like the autumn leaves swirling around their feet. Her blonde hair was pulled back in a messy bun, escaped strands framing a face that might have been beautiful if it were not so hollowed by whatever storm had blown through her life. She was wearing a red dress. Once beautiful, he could tell. The kind of dress a woman puts on when she wants to feel pretty, when she needs the armor of her best outfit to face something difficult. But it hung looser than it should, evidence of weight lost to suffering. The fabric was slightly worn at the edges, the color faded in places where it had been washed too many times. But it was her eyes that stopped him cold. Hazel eyes, red-rimmed, impossibly sad, fixed on him with a desperation that made his chest tighten with recognition. She looked like she had put on her prettiest dress for courage, then lost every ounce of it somewhere between getting dressed and arriving here. "Excuse me," she said. Her voice was barely above a whisper, trembling like a leaf clinging to its branch in a windstorm. "I am sorry to bother you, but can you give me a hug, please?" Nathan blinked. In his 34 years on Earth, he had been asked for a lot of things. Money by panhandlers downtown, directions by confused tourists looking for Powell's books or the Japanese garden. The time by people whose phones had died. Someone had once asked him if he could help catch their runaway ferret in the park, which had led to a surprisingly athletic 20 minutes and a story he still told at parties. But this was entirely new territory. The woman must have seen the confusion flash across his face, because tears immediately welled up in her eyes. Her whole body seemed to contract with mortification, shoulders hunching inward, arms wrapping around herself like she was trying to disappear into her own skin. "I am sorry," she said quickly, her voice cracking. "I know that is weird. I should not have. I do not know what I was thinking. I will just go. I am sorry. I am so sorry." She started to turn away, and something in Nathan broke open. "Wait," he said, standing up quickly. His coffee sloshed slightly in his hand, spilling warm drops onto his fingers. He barely noticed. There was something about her, something about the raw vulnerability in her expression that reminded him of the children he worked with at the pediatric therapy center. Kids who had been through car accidents, sports injuries, surgeries. Kids who had had their bodies betray them in ways that left scars both visible and invisible. That look, he knew that look. It was the look of someone who had been hurt so badly they had forgotten what kindness felt like. Someone who had learned to expect rejection the way other people expected sunrise. "It is okay," he continued, setting his coffee down on the bench. Are you all right? The simple question broke something in her. Her face crumpled like paper crushed in a fist. She shook her head, and the motion seemed to release whatever dam she had been holding back. Tears spilled down her cheeks, cutting tracks through the light makeup she had applied with such care. No, she whispered. I am really not. I just have not had a hug in so long. And I saw you sitting here and you looked kind. Like maybe you would understand. And I just thought maybe. She trailed off, mortified by her own request. Her hands were trembling. She looked like she wanted the earth to swallow her whole, to save her from the embarrassment of standing here asking a stranger for the most basic human comfort. Nathan's heart cracked open. He did not think. He did not weigh the appropriateness of embracing someone he had known for less than 60 seconds. He did not consider what the other cafe patrons might think, or whether this woman might be running some kind of elaborate scam. He just opened his arms. Come here, he said softly. The woman hesitated for only a second. One heartbeat of disbelief, of checking to see if he was real, or some kind of hallucination conjured by desperate loneliness. Then she stepped into his embrace. The moment Nathan's arms closed around her, she collapsed. Not dramatically, not loudly, just completely. Like a building that had been standing on willpower alone, finally admitting it had no foundation left. Her thin frame shook with quiet sobs. He could feel every bone through her jacket, could feel the tremors running through her body like tiny earthquakes. Her fingers clutched his shirt, holding on like he was a life raft in the middle of a vast, dark ocean. She made a sound. Not quite a sob, not quite a moan. Something raw and wounded that bypassed his brain entirely and went straight to his heart. Nathan held her gently, carefully, the way he had held Rosie after her worst nightmares. The ones where she dreamed about losing him too, where she woke up screaming for Daddy because she had already lost Mommy, and her small heart could not bear the thought of being left completely alone. He did not say anything. Sometimes words were useless. Sometimes all another human being needed was to be held, to be reminded that they existed, that they mattered, that they were not invisible, even when they felt like ghosts drifting through a world that had stopped seeing them. So he just held her while she cried, while the autumn sun painted gold across the cobblestones, while strangers walked past, some staring curiously, some pretending not to notice all of them, eventually moving on to their own lives, their own concerns, their own private griefs. He did not know how long they stood there. Time stopped mattering. This was not about minutes or seconds. This was about one human being recognizing the drowning desperation in another and choosing to throw them a rope. After what felt like both a moment and an eternity, the woman pulled back. She wiped frantically at her eyes, smearing what remained of her mascara into dark smudges beneath her lashes. I am so sorry, she said, her voice thick with embarrassment and leftover tears. That was completely inappropriate. I promise I am not crazy. I am just going through something really difficult right now. She looked down at her feet, unable to meet his eyes. Her cheeks burned with shame. I am Savannah, she continued, still staring at the ground. Savannah Wells. And I swear I do not normally accost strangers and demand physical affection. Despite the heaviness of the moment, Nathan smiled. Nathan Cole, he replied. And for what it is worth, you do not seem crazy. You seem like someone who needed a hug. He gestured to the bench. Would you like to sit down? Maybe tell me what is going on. You do not have to, but I have got about 25 minutes before my daughter comes out of that cafe, and I am a pretty good listener. Savannah looked at him then. Really looked at him. Like she was trying to figure out if he was real or some kind of hallucination conjured by 2 years of desperate loneliness. You do not have to do that, she said quietly. You have already been kinder than you needed to be. I know I do not have to. Nathan's voice was gentle but firm. But I would like to. Come on, sit. They sat together on the bench, and for a moment neither of them spoke. Savannah seemed to be gathering herself, deciding whether to trust this stranger who had just held her while she cried, deciding whether the kindness was real or just another mirage in the desert of her isolation. The autumn breeze carried the scent of fallen leaves and coffee. Somewhere in the distance, a child laughed. Nathan waited patient as Stone giving her the space to find her words. Finally, Savannah took a shaky breath. "Today marks exactly 2 years since my entire life fell apart," she said, staring at her hands folded in her lap. Her fingers were thin, the knuckles prominent. The hands of someone who had lost weight they could not afford to lose. 2 years ago today, I was driving home from my nursing shift at a hospital in Seattle. I had just worked a double. 16 hours. I was exhausted, but happy because I had helped a patient who had been struggling finally make a breakthrough in their recovery. She paused and Nathan saw her jaw tighten. I was stopped at a red light at the intersection of Pine and Fifth, just sitting there, waiting for the light to change. Probably half asleep, if I am being honest. Her voice dropped, taking on a distant quality like she was watching the memory play out on a screen only she could see. And then this drunk driver came out of nowhere and slammed into my car at full speed. He ran the red light doing about 60 in a 35 zone. Nathan winced. As a physical therapist, he had worked with enough accident survivors to know what kind of damage that speed could cause. Savannah. The impact crushed the driver's side of my car like it was made of aluminum foil. Savannah's voice was steady now, almost clinical, the way people sometimes get when they have told a story. So many times it has worn grooves into their memory. I remember the sound, this awful screaming of metal and glass shattering, and then pain. So much pain I could not even scream. She looked up at the sky, blinking back fresh tears. I remember thinking, this is it. This is how I die. At a traffic light in Seattle on a Tuesday. The words hung in the air between them. But I did not die. Savannah continued, and there was something complicated in her voice, something that was not quite gratitude. Sometimes I wonder if that would have been easier. They had to cut me out of the car. The paramedics told me later that I had sustained severe spinal injuries and a shattered pelvis. My L4 and L5 vertebrae were fractured, and my pelvis broke in 3 places. Nathan felt his professional instincts kick in even as his heart ached for her. He knew those injuries. He knew the months of rehabilitation they required, the countless hours of physical therapy, the constant pain that never quite went away. That is, he struggled to find words. I cannot even imagine. I spent 8 months in hospitals and rehabilitation centers, Savannah said. 3 surgeries on my spine, 2 on my pelvis. Learning to walk again was to walk again. She laughed bitterly, the sound harsh against the peaceful autumn afternoon. They do not tell you in the movies how humiliating it is, how much it destroys your sense of self when you cannot do basic things anymore, when you have to relearn how to walk like a toddler holding onto parallel bars while therapists cheer you on for taking 3 steps. Nathan leaned forward slightly. I am a pediatric physical therapist, he said quietly. I have worked with kids going through similar trauma. I know the strength it takes. Savannah shook her head. It does not feel like strength. It feels like survival. And barely that. She stared at her hands again. The medical bills buried me. I had insurance, but not enough. Not nearly enough. Every surgery, every night in the hospital, every therapy session, it all added up. I am drowning in debt. $78,000 and counting. Nathan let out a low whistle before he could stop himself. Catastrophic, Savannah supplied. Yeah, but here is the thing. I could have handled the physical pain. I could have handled the debt. What I could not handle. She finally looked at him, and the anguish in her eyes nearly undid him. What I could not handle was the loneliness. Nathan held her gaze, wordless, waiting. My parents disowned me 6 years ago, Savannah continued. I had married someone they did not approve of. Tyler. He was from a different background, different religion, different socioeconomic class. They said if I married him, I was choosing to cut them out of my life. She laughed again, that same bitter sound. I thought they were bluffing. They were not. When the accident happened, I tried to reach out. I was scared and alone and broken, and I just wanted my mom. Her voice cracked on the last word. I called from the hospital. My dad answered. I told him what happened. And you know what he said. Nathan shook his head. He said you made your choices. Now you have to live with the consequences. And he hung up. The words landed like stones dropped into still water ripples of horror spreading outward. "It gets better," Savannah said with a hollow laugh. "Tyler, my husband, left me 3 months after the accident. Said he could not handle seeing me like this, which is code for I did not sign up to be married to someone with chronic pain and disability." She took another shaky breath. "He filed for divorce while I was still using a walker. The ink on the papers was barely dry before he was dating someone else. I lost my job because I could not go back to nursing. The physical demands were too much. My disability payments barely cover rent for a studio apartment in one of Portland's rougher neighborhoods. I moved here hoping for a fresh start, but instead I found nothing. Just more loneliness." Nathan found his voice. "What about friends?" "Drifted away," Savannah said simply. "At first they visited, brought flowers, said the right things. But chronic pain and disability make people uncomfortable. They do not know what to say. The invitations stopped coming. The calls became less frequent. Eventually they disappeared entirely." She turned to face him fully. "Do you know what the worst part is? Not the pain, though. That is there every single day. Not the debt or the loss of my career or even my family's rejection. The worst part is that I realized this morning, 2 years to the day of the accident, that I have not had any physical affection, not a hug, not even a handshake, that meant something in all that time." Her voice dropped to barely a whisper. "I felt like I was disappearing, like I was not even human anymore. Just this ghost moving through the world, taking up space, but not really existing." Fresh tears rolled down her cheeks. "Do you know what loneliness sounds like?" she asked. "It sounds like the refrigerator humming at 2 in the morning. It sounds like your own breathing. It sounds like neighbors laughing through thin walls, living lives you are not part of. Sometimes I leave the TV on just so there is another voice in the room. I do not even watch it. I just need to hear someone talking, even if they are not talking to me." I started talking to myself a few months ago, having full conversations, asking myself questions and answering them. Is that crazy? I think it might be crazy. But when you have not had a real conversation in weeks, your brain starts to eat itself. She covered her face with her hands. "I left my apartment today thinking I might just walk until I could not walk anymore. But then I saw you sitting here, and something about you looked safe, kind. Like maybe you would understand." She dropped her hands, finally meeting his eyes. "I am sorry. This is too much. You did not ask for my life story." Nathan sat with her words, feeling their weight settle into his bones. He understood her in a way that surprised him, recognized her pain because he had carried his own version of it for 3 years. Finally he spoke. 3 years ago my wife collapsed while jogging." Savannah's head snapped up, her tear-stained face registering surprise. "She went out for a morning run, same as she did every day. 5 miles through our neighborhood, rain or shine. She had been training for a half marathon. She was 31 years old, healthy, vibrant, full of life." Nathan stared at the maple tree across the street, its leaves burning red and gold in the afternoon sun. "A neighbor found her on the sidewalk 3 blocks from our house. Sudden cardiac arrest caused by a congenital heart defect no one knew existed. It was hiding in her chest, her whole life waiting. One moment she was alive, laughing, planning our daughter's 3rd birthday party. The next, she was gone." Savannah's hand moved to her mouth. "Nathan, I became a single father overnight," he continued, drowning in grief while trying to explain to a confused toddler why Mommy was not coming home. "Rosie, that is my daughter. She is 6 now. But back then she was so little. She kept setting a plate for Claire at dinner, kept asking when she could show Mommy her new drawings." His voice roughened. "For a long time I felt exactly what you described. Invisible. Like the world had moved on and forgotten I was still standing in the rubble. People stopped calling because they did not know what to say. Couples we had been friends with drifted away because I was suddenly a reminder that life is fragile and unfair. I was a single dad in a world full of intact families, and I felt like an alien." They sat in shared understanding. 2 people who had been broken by life in different ways, but understood the same fundamental truth: loneliness was its own kind of death. "How did you—" Savannah started, then stopped. How did you survive it? Honestly, Rosie saved me. Nathan's voice was gentle. I did not have the luxury of falling apart completely because she needed me. And my work helped too, helping kids recover from injuries, seeing them fight to get better. It reminded me that healing was possible even when it felt impossible. Before Savannah could respond, the cafe door burst open with the force of a small hurricane. Daddy, a little girl with wild brown curls and eyes the color of warm honey, came barreling out of the cafe, followed by a laughing woman who could only be Nathan's sister. The child launched herself at Nathan, who caught her with practiced ease, scooping her up into his arms like he had done it 10,000 times before. Because he had. Hey, Jellybean, how was Auntie Day? So good. The words came out in a breathless rush, tumbling over each other in their eagerness to be heard. We made cookies shaped like dinosaurs, and Auntie Beth let me put so much frosting on them that she said they looked like they had been attacked by a frosting monster, and I said that is, because they were. And she laughed so hard milk came out of her nose. Well, not real milk, almond milk, because she is lactose intolerant. She said the last 3 words carefully, clearly proud of herself for remembering such a complicated term. Nathan's sister laughed, a warm sound that matched the autumn afternoon. Lactose intolerant, sweetie, but close enough. She noticed Savannah then, and her expression shifted to polite curiosity. Not suspicious exactly, but watchful. The way any good sister would be when encountering a tearful stranger sitting with her brother. Nathan set Rosie down gently. Rosie, this is my new friend Savannah. The little girl turned to Savannah with the unfiltered interest only children possess. No social filters, no pretense, just raw, honest curiosity. Hi, I am Rosie, and I am 6 3/4, which is almost 7, she announced, climbing onto the bench between them without invitation. Are you friends with my daddy? Do you like dinosaurs? I like the ones with the long necks, but also the scary ones with big teeth, even though they give some people nightmares. But not me, because I am very brave. She barely paused for breath. Do you know what Daddy says? He says I ask a million questions, but I counted once, and it is really only about 47, so he is very wrong about math. For the first time since approaching Nathan, Savannah laughed. Really laughed. The sound was rusty, like something that had not been used in a very long time, but genuine. It transformed her face, softening the sharp edges of exhaustion and grief. Hi, Rosie. That is a beautiful name, Savannah said, and Rosie beamed under the compliment. I like all the dinosaurs, but my favorite is probably the Stegosaurus, because they look friendly with those plates on their backs. Ooh, I like those too. Rosie bounced excitedly, her curls flying. The plates are so cool. Did you know they might have been for temperature control, or maybe to look scary to predators? Scientists are not totally sure yet, which means there are still mysteries in the world, which Daddy says is a good thing, because mysteries keep life interesting. Nathan caught Savannah's eye over his daughter's head and mouthed, sorry, but Savannah was smiling. A real smile that reached her eyes for the first time since she had approached him on this bench. Your daddy is very wise, Savannah told Rosie. I think mysteries do keep life interesting. But then Rosie did something that stopped the conversation cold. She studied Savannah with that unnerving way children have of seeing through all the defenses adults spend years constructing. Her honey-colored eyes moved across Savannah's face like she was reading a book written in a language she somehow understood perfectly. You look sad, she announced matter-of-factly. Not crying sad. The inside kind of sad. Like Daddy when he thinks I am not looking. Savannah's breath caught. Rosie continued undeterred by the weight of her own observation. Daddy was very sad after Mommy went to heaven. But he says sad does not mean broken. It just means your heart is remembering how much it loved somebody. Is your heart remembering too? The question hung in the air, innocent and devastating all at once. Nathan watched Savannah struggle to respond, watched her eyes fill with fresh tears at this 6-year-old's accidental wisdom. Yes, Savannah finally managed. I suppose it is. Rosie nodded seriously, as if this confirmed something she had already suspected. That is okay. Hearts are really good at remembering. That is their job. Then with the mercurial nature of childhood, She switched topics entirely. "Do you want to come to the park with us? We are going to feed the ducks, even though Daddy says we are not supposed to give them bread because it is bad for them, so we bring special duck food that we get from the pet store. The ducks like it almost as much as bread, Daddy says, but I think maybe they are just being polite." Nathan started to object. Savannah had been through enough today. She probably wanted nothing more than to go home, crawl into bed, and pretend this entire humiliating encounter had never happened. But Savannah spoke first. "I would love that," she said, and she sounded like she meant it. That afternoon at Laurelhurst Park became something neither of them expected, the first chapter of a story neither knew they were writing. They fed the ducks together, Rosie demonstrating the proper technique for tossing the special food. "You have to throw it in an arch," she explained seriously, "so the shy ducks in the back get some too. Mommy taught me that." The casual mention of her mother made Nathan's chest tighten, but Rosie seemed unbothered by it. Claire was simply part of her vocabulary now, a reference point she had learned to carry without the crushing weight of fresh grief. Savannah watched Rosie with something like wonder on her face. Like she had forgotten that children existed, that joy existed, that laughter over duck food in a park on an October afternoon was a thing that could happen. After the ducks were fed and Rosie had run off to investigate a particularly interesting tree, Nathan found himself standing beside Savannah at the water's edge. "Thank you," Savannah said quietly. "For everything. The hug, the conversation, including me in this." She gestured vaguely at the park around them. "I cannot remember the last time I did something normal like this. Just existing in a beautiful place with other people. Not being alone." Nathan nodded. "I know what you mean. For a long time after Claire died, I forgot how to exist anywhere except inside my own head. Rosie pulled me out of it, but it took time." He hesitated, then made a decision. "Listen, Savannah. I do not know what you are going through, not really. But I know something about loneliness and grief. And I know that having someone to talk to makes a difference." He pulled out his phone. "Give me your number. If you ever need to talk or just need someone to sit with you or whatever, reach out." Savannah stared at him. "You do not have to do that. I know, but I want to." They exchanged numbers as Rosie came running back, breathless with some new discovery about the tree's inhabitants. Possibly squirrels, possibly fairies. She was not entirely sure. And when they finally parted ways, Savannah walking toward the bus stop, Nathan and Rosie heading to their car, something had shifted in the air. Something small, but significant. A door cracking open in a wall that had been sealed shut for too long. She texted him a week later, tentative and apologetic. "Is the offer for coffee still open? I promise not to cry this time." Probably. Coffee turned into a weekly tradition. Then twice a week. Then 3 times a week, with Rosie often joining them, chattering away about school and dinosaurs, and her elaborate theories about whether squirrels could understand English if you spoke slowly enough. Nathan learned things about Savannah in those coffee meetings. That she had grown up wanting to be a nurse since she was 10 years old when her grandmother was hospitalized, and the nurses had been so kind. That she had dreamed of specializing in pediatric oncology before the accident, helping sick kids the way Nathan helped injured ones. That she still had nightmares about the sound of metal crushing, still woke up sometimes convinced she was trapped in that car waiting to die. Savannah learned things about Nathan too. That he had met Claire in college in a chemistry class neither of them had wanted to take. That their first date had been at a terrible restaurant that gave them both food poisoning, and they had spent the night taking turns in his bathroom while watching old movies on his laptop. That he had proposed on a Tuesday for no particular reason except that he could not wait any longer to ask her. They learned each other's rhythms. Nathan noticed that Savannah winced when she sat too long and started offering his jacket as a cushion without making a big deal of it. Savannah noticed that Nathan got quiet on days when Rosie mentioned Claire and learned to give him space without calling attention to it. Rosie declared Savannah her grown-up best friend, which was different from her regular best friend, Sophie, at school, because grown-up best friends could buy you ice cream without asking permission. 3 weeks into their friendship, the bad pain day happened. It was a Saturday when Savannah was supposed to join them for their weekly park visit. Nathan called her that morning to confirm, and her voice was wrong. Thin. Strained, like she was speaking through gritted teeth. "I cannot today," she said. "I am sorry. I am having a bad day." He could hear something in her voice, something she was trying to hide. "Savannah, what is wrong?" A long pause, then almost a whisper. "Just the pain. It is really bad today. I can barely move." Nathan made a decision. "We are coming over." "No, you do not have to." But he had already hung up. 20 minutes later, they stood outside her apartment building. Nathan had only been here once before, when he had helped her move a bookshelf she had bought second-hand. The building was old paint, peeling in a neighborhood that made him lock his car doors twice. 3 flights of stairs, no elevator. He thought about Savannah climbing those stairs every day with her pain. When she opened the door, she looked like a ghost of herself. Pale, dark circles under her eyes, moving like every step cost her something precious. She was wearing sweatpants and an oversized sweater, her hair in a messy bun, makeup completely absent. She looked embarrassed, ashamed. "You should not see me like this." But Rosie did not hesitate. She walked straight past Savannah into the tiny apartment, located the worn couch, and patted the cushion. "We are having a movie day," she announced with the authority of a general directing troops. "Daddy, make popcorn. Miss Savannah, you sit here and do not move. I will find the blankets." Savannah looked at Nathan, tears in her eyes. "This is part of you," Nathan said gently. "The good days and the bad days. We are not going anywhere." They spent the afternoon watching animated movies. Rosie curled against Savannah's side, Nathan on her other side. When Savannah fell asleep during the second film, exhausted from fighting pain, Rosie whispered, "See, Daddy, she needed us. Good thing we came." The weeks turned into months, and Savannah began to transform before their eyes. The first thing Nathan noticed was the weight. She was eating more, the sharp angles of her face softening into something healthier. Color returned to her cheeks. Her hair, once limp and neglected, started to shine again. But more than the physical changes, it was the laughter that marked her transformation. She laughed more easily now, the rusty sound of those early days smoothing into something natural and bright. She had opinions about movies and strong feelings about books and a dry sense of humor that could catch Nathan off guard in the best way. The red dress she had worn that first day hung in her closet, she told him once. She had bought new clothes now, casual ones for park visits and movie nights, jeans and comfortable sweaters. Clothes for someone who expected to see people, to be seen. She joined a chronic pain support group at Nathan's gentle suggestion. The first meeting was terrifying, she admitted, walking into a room full of strangers and admitting that she was struggling, that she needed help. But she had done it, and it had been life-changing. "I have people now," she told him one afternoon, wonder in her voice. "People who know my name, who check on me, who understand what I am going through because they are going through it too." For the first time in 2 years, she had a community. For the first time in 2 years, she was not completely alone. Savannah became a constant presence in their lives. She started helping Rosie with homework, especially art projects where her creative eye proved invaluable. Nathan finally learned to cook actual meals under her patient guidance, though he still managed to burn things with impressive regularity. "How did you survive this long?" Savannah teased one evening, rescuing a pan of chicken from its smoky fate. "Takeout," Nathan admitted. "Lots and lots of takeout." Their evening conversations after Rosie went to bed became the part of the day Nathan looked forward to most. They would sit on his back porch with cups of tea, talking about everything and nothing, about their dreams and their fears, about the weird thing Rosie said at dinner and the difficult patient Nathan was working with and the book Savannah was reading. He told her about Claire without the crushing pain now. Savannah made it safe to remember to honor his wife's memory without drowning in grief. She asked questions about Claire, genuine questions, and Nathan found that answering them felt less like reopening wounds and more like keeping something precious alive. Savannah talked about her dreams before the accident, how she had wanted to specialize in pediatric oncology to help sick kids fight the hardest battles of their lives, how she had had a plan, a 5-year trajectory, applications to fellowship programs ready to submit. "I thought I knew exactly where my life was going," she said. "And then a drunk driver ran a red light, and everything I thought I knew became irrelevant." She paused. "But maybe that is okay. Maybe the detour is taking me somewhere better. I just could not see it until now." One evening, about 4 months into their friendship, Rosie presented Savannah with a project that nearly broke her. Miss Savannah Rosie came running out of her room with a large piece of poster board. "I need help." It was a school assignment, a family tree. "We have to draw our family and explain who everyone is," Rosie explained, spreading the poster on the living room floor. "But my tree looks naked." She pointed at her work in progress. Nathan was there, and Auntie Beth and grandparents on both sides. But compared to the elaborate trees she had seen her classmates working on, it seemed sparse. "Other kids have like 100 relatives," Rosie said mournfully. "Katie has cousins and second cousins and great aunts and even a step-uncle, whatever that is. Mine looks sad." Savannah lowered herself to the floor beside Rosie, wincing slightly at the movement. Her pain was manageable today, but the floor was never kind to her back. "Can I see?" She studied the poster thoughtfully. "You know what I think, Rosie, family trees do not have to be just people you are related to." Rosie looked up confused. "Sometimes the most important family members are the ones you choose." Savannah continued. "The people who love you and show up for you and remember your favorite dinosaur and laugh at your jokes." Rosie's eyes went wide. "Like you." Savannah's throat closed up. She could not speak, could only nod. "Then you go on my tree right here." Rosie grabbed a green marker and drew a branch extending from Nathan's side. In careful 6-year-old handwriting, she labeled it Miss Savannah, Family. Nathan watched from the doorway, tears streaming down his face that he quickly wiped away before either of them noticed. As the months passed, Rosie began asking questions that made Nathan's heart race. It started innocuously enough. Bedtime conversations that wandered from dinosaurs to deeper waters with the unpredictability only children could manage. Daddy, Rosie asked one night, tucked under her purple comforter with her stuffed stegosaurus. "Do you think Miss Savannah is pretty?" Nathan felt his face warm. "She is, yes, she is very pretty." "Why do you ask?" "Just wondering." Rosie's tone was suspiciously casual. "Sophie says her mom thinks it is weird that you spend so much time with Miss Savannah if she is not your girlfriend. Sophie's mom should mind her own business." Nathan muttered, then caught himself. "But yes, Miss Savannah is my friend. A good friend." Rosie was quiet for a moment. "Do you get butterflies in your tummy when she is here?" Nathan's heart skipped. "What makes you ask that?" "Because that is what happens in movies when people are in love," Rosie explained patiently, as if educating a particularly slow student. "Their tummies get all fluttery and they smile a lot and they look at each other weird." "Weird how?" "You know." She made a face. "Like their eyes get soft and they forget other people are in the room." Nathan did not have a response to that. A few nights later, Rosie made her official recommendation. "I think you should marry Miss Savannah," she announced during story time. Nathan nearly dropped the book. "What?" "Before someone else tells her first and we miss our chance." That is what happened in that movie, where the prince waited too long and the princess thought he did not like her and almost married the wrong person. "It was very stressful, Daddy." "I do not want us to be stressed." Nathan laughed, but his heart was pounding. Out of the mouths of babes. After Rosie fell asleep, he sat in the dark living room thinking about Savannah. When had she stopped being the woman who asked for a hug and become essential? He thought about the way she looked at Rosie, with such tender attention, like his daughter's words were the most important thing in the world. He thought about the way she talked about books, her whole face lighting up when she found someone who had read the same ones. He thought about how she laughed at his terrible jokes, even when they were not funny. He thought about how she fought through pain without complaining, showing up to Rosie's school play with a heating pad hidden under her coat because she refused to miss it. He thought about how she had learned all the dinosaur names just so she could have conversations with a 6-year-old. 3 years ago, he had thought that part of him died with Claire. The part that could love someone that way, that could imagine building a life with another person. He thought that door had closed, permanently locked, and buried and gone. But Savannah had opened it. Not by replacing Claire, never that, but by showing him that love was not a finite resource, that his heart had more room than he knew, that loving again did not mean forgetting, it meant honoring what came before while making space for what could come next. He was falling in love with her. The realization should have terrified him. The last time he had loved someone this much, she had died. He had spent 3 years building walls around his heart, protecting himself and Rosie from that kind of devastation. But as he sat in the dark, thinking about Savannah's smile and her laugh, and the way she fit into their lives like she had always been there, he realized something. He was not afraid of loving her. He was afraid of not telling her. 7 months after that first meeting outside the Copperleaf Café, Nathan was making dinner. Rosie's requested spaghetti with the really good sauce, not the jar kind of recipe Savannah had taught him that he could now execute without burning anything. Savannah was supposed to come over soon. She came to dinner at least 3 times a week now, often staying late to help with Rosie's bedtime routine. Reading stories, discussing the day's mysteries, answering the 47 questions that apparently constituted Rosie's nightly ritual. Nathan found himself watching for her car, listening for her knock, anticipating her presence, the way plants anticipated sunlight. He had not told her yet, had not found the words, or the courage, or the right moment. But tonight, he had decided. Tonight, he would tell her how he felt. The doorbell rang. His heart lifted. But when he opened the door, it was not Savannah standing there. It was Richard and Eleanor Crawford, Claire's parents. They looked older than the last time he had seen them, which had been at Claire's funeral 3 years ago. Richard's hair had gone completely grey. Eleanor's face bore new lines of grief that had not quite settled into her features. After the funeral, their grief had been too overwhelming to visit. They could not look at Rosie without breaking down, seeing Claire's eyes in her face, Claire's curls in her hair. Eventually, the visits had stopped entirely. They sent birthday cards and occasional checks, but maintained their distance. Now they stood on his porch, their expressions grim. Richard, Eleanor. Nathan stepped aside, automatically, his good manners overriding his confusion. Please come in. This is unexpected. They entered stiffly, their eyes immediately scanning his home like investigators at a crime scene. Nathan felt a chill run down his spine that had nothing to do with the autumn air. Eleanor's gaze landed on the dining table, where 3 placemats were set instead of 2. Are you expecting someone? Her tone was sharp. Savannah is coming for dinner, Nathan said carefully, already sensing danger. She is Rosie's and my friend. Eleanor's face hardened. Yes, she said coldly. We would like to talk to you about her. Nathan felt his blood run cold. Excuse me? The Crawfords moved into the living room without waiting for an invitation. Nathan followed, positioning himself between them and the kitchen, where Rosie was coloring at the counter, oblivious to the tension crackling through the air. We have been doing some research, Richard said, his voice heavy with disapproval. This Savannah Wells you have been spending time with, who you have introduced to our granddaughter. The emphasis on our granddaughter set Nathan's teeth on edge. What kind of research? Eleanor pulled out her phone, scrolling through what looked like printed documents. She is drowning in medical debt. $78,000. Her voice was clinical, reciting facts like a prosecutor presenting evidence. She is on disability. She lives in a dangerous neighborhood. She was divorced 2 years ago. Her own family will not speak to her. Nathan's hands clenched into fists. How did you... You investigated her. Like she is some kind of criminal. We are concerned about Rosie's well-being, Eleanor shot back. You are exposing our granddaughter to an unstable woman with serious problems. Richard stepped forward, his expression stern. What were you thinking, Nathan? This woman is a stranger. She is financially unstable. She is dealing with chronic health issues. She comes with baggage that could affect Rosie. We will not stand by and watch you make reckless decisions. Something snapped inside Nathan. I was thinking, he said, his voice low and dangerous, that Savannah is a kind, compassionate person who has been through hell and came out the other side. I was thinking that she has been an amazing presence in Rosie's life. I was thinking it is none of your business who I choose to spend time with. It becomes our business when it involves our granddaughter, Eleanor interrupted coldly. This woman is a stranger. She is financially unstable. She is dealing with chronic health issues. She comes with baggage that could affect Rosie. Nathan's voice dropped to barely above a whisper, mindful of Rosie in the next room. Savannah is my friend. She has been nothing but good to Rosie. And frankly, where were you two for the past 2 years? He stepped closer, his anger building. You could not handle seeing your granddaughter because she reminded you too much of Claire, so you disappeared. You do not get to show up now and question my parenting. Richard's face reddened. We are considering filing for grandparent visitation rights, he said coldly. Perhaps even pursuing custody if we feel Rosie's environment is unsuitable. The words hung in the air like a bomb detonating in slow motion. Nathan could not breathe. You are threatening to take my daughter. We are concerned about your judgment, Eleanor said, though her voice wavered slightly. We have lost our daughter. We will not lose our granddaughter to poor decisions. Nathan stepped closer to them, his voice shaking with barely controlled rage. You want to talk about judgment? Let us talk about how you have not visited Rosie in 18 months. Let us talk about how you missed her kindergarten graduation. Let us talk about how the only time you remember she exists is when you want to control something. He opened the front door. Claire would be ashamed of you. Both of you. She always rooted for the underdog. She believed in second chances. She had a heart. Something you have both forgotten you ever had. He pointed toward the door. Get out of my house. They left, but their threat lingered like smoke in the air. Nathan stood in his living room shaking with rage and fear. He knew they probably could not actually win custody. He was a good father. He provided a stable home. He had a solid job. His record was spotless. But they could make his life hell with legal battles. They could drag him through court, cost him money. He did not have for lawyers, create stress that would affect Rosie. They could turn his life upside down simply because they disapproved of his choices. When Savannah arrived 30 minutes later, bright-eyed and carrying a plate of homemade brownies, Nathan's heart broke all over again. Hey, I made brownies, she announced, smiling. Well, I say made loosely. I used a box mix, but I added extra chocolate chips, so I am calling it gourmet. She noticed his expression immediately, her smile fading. What is wrong? Nathan told her everything. He watched her face pale with each word, watched the light dim in her eyes as he described the Crawfords' investigation. Their accusations, their threat. When he finished, she set the brownies down carefully like her hands were not quite steady. Maybe they are right, she whispered. Savannah! No, Nathan, listen to me. Her eyes were filling with tears. They are right. I do come with baggage. So much baggage. Debt, health problems, a dysfunctional family, a failed marriage. I am a mess. She wrapped her arms around herself, the way she had that first day on the bench. You and Rosie deserve better than someone who is broken. Nathan started to protest. Do not say that. I should give you space. Savannah continued, backing toward the door. Let things calm down with the grandparents. I do not want to be the reason you lose Rosie. Her voice cracked. I could never forgive myself. Savannah, please. I am sorry, Nathan. I am so sorry. She left, and Nathan did not stop her, partially because he was stunned. Partially because some small, terrified part of him wondered if she was right. Back in her tiny apartment, Savannah fell apart. The loneliness that had been slowly healing came roaring back with a vengeance. She had allowed herself to believe for a few precious months that she could have a family again, that she could be loved despite her brokenness, that maybe, just maybe, she had finally found her place in the world. She should have known better. Every night she looked at photos on her phone. Nathan and Rosie at the park, Rosie's drawings that she had photographed. Selfies the three of them had taken together laughing at something Rosie said, their faces pressed close to fit in the frame. She traced their faces on the screen and let herself cry. 7 months ago she had asked a stranger for a hug because she felt invisible. Now she felt worse than invisible. She felt like she had glimpsed heaven and then been cast back into darkness. Like she had remembered what warmth felt like only to freeze all over again. The red dress hung in her closet like a ghost of who she had briefly gotten to be. Her pain flared worse than it had in months, stress manifesting physically the way it always did. Her back screamed, her legs ached, Her whole body felt like it was punishing her for daring to hope. She stopped going to her support group, stopped answering texts beyond brief, polite responses, stopped doing anything except surviving the way she had before Nathan and Rosie entered her life. The walls of her apartment closed in around her, and she let them. 3 weeks passed. 3 weeks of Savannah not answering Nathan's texts beyond brief responses. 3 weeks of Rosie asking constantly where Miss Savannah was. 3 weeks of the house feeling wrong, incomplete, haunted by an absence that had once been a presence. Nathan dealt with the Crawfords. He set firm boundaries, threatened legal action if the harassment continued. He consulted a lawyer friend who confirmed what he had suspected. Grandparent custody cases were extraordinarily difficult to win, especially against a fit parent with a stable home. Richard and Eleanor eventually backed off. Their lawyer had apparently informed them they had no real case. They sent a stiff letter acknowledging that they had overstepped, though it contained no actual apology. But Savannah did not know any of that, and Nathan was too proud, too hurt, too confused to tell her. He found himself looking at his phone, constantly typing messages and deleting them, composing paragraphs of explanation that never got sent. Starting to call and losing his nerve before the first ring. He caught himself saving a seat for her at dinner, setting out 3 placemats instead of 2, then remembering with a jolt that she was not coming. The house felt wrong without her presence. Her books were still on his shelf, mixed with his. Her favorite mug was still in the cabinet. The blanket she always used during movie nights was still folded on the couch. Every reminder was a small knife. Rosie felt it too. She grew quieter, more withdrawn. She stopped talking about aliens and dinosaurs as much. She stopped asking a million questions. Her teacher called concerned about changes in her behavior. "She seems sad," Ms. Rodriguez said. "Is everything okay at home?" Everything was not okay at home, but Nathan did not know how to fix it. One night at bedtime, Rosie finally broke. "She is part of our family, Daddy." The words came out thick with tears, her small body shaking against his. "We are not supposed to lose family. We already lost Mommy. I do not want to lose Miss Savannah, too." Nathan held his daughter while she cried, feeling like the worst father in the world. He had let fear drive away someone they both loved. He had let his in-laws' cruelty poison something beautiful. He had chosen safety over happiness, and now they were all miserable. That night, after Rosie finally fell asleep, Nathan lay awake in the dark. He thought about Claire. What would she say if she could see him now? He could almost hear her voice, the gentle exasperation she had always used when he was being stubborn about something. "You are being an idiot, Nathan. That woman loves you and Rosie, and you love her. Stop letting fear win." He thought about their wedding day, standing at the altar, watching Claire walk toward him. The joy in her eyes, the certainty that whatever came next, they would face it together. Claire would not want him to protect her memory by staying alone. She would want him to live fully, to love again, to give Rosie a complete family. She would want Savannah kind and resilient and broken but healing Savannah in their lives. The question is not whether I love her, Nathan realized. The question is whether I am brave enough to fight for her. Saturday morning arrived grey and drizzling, matching Nathan's mood. He was making pancakes, Rosie's weekend tradition when she marched into the kitchen with a look of determination that reminded him startlingly of Claire. "Daddy, I need markers and paper," she announced. "What for, Jelly Bean?" "A very important project that is none of your business until it is done." She crossed her arms. "But it is about Miss Savannah, so you have to help me when I am ready." Nathan's heart clenched. He gave her the markers and paper, and watched her disappear into her room, closing the door behind her with unusual ceremony. 2 hours later she emerged. In her hands she held a drawing. 3 stick figures holding hands under a bright yellow sun. One had wild curly hair, clearly her. One was tall with short hair, obviously Nathan, and one had long blonde hair and a big smile. Above them in careful 6-year-old handwriting, "Our family." Nathan's throat tightened. "We are taking this to Miss Savannah. Right now!" Rosie announced, her voice brooking no argument. "Because she needs to know she is still our family, even if she is being silly and staying away." "Rosie, maybe it is more complicated than—" "No, it is not," Rosie interrupted with rare firmness, her honey-colored eyes blazing with 6-year-old conviction. "She is sad. We are sad. Everybody is sad. So we fix it. That is what families do. Nathan stared at his daughter. This tiny person who had lost her mother at 3 years old, who had had to learn about death and grief and absence before she could even read. This brave, resilient, impossible child who somehow still believed that love could fix things. She was right. How could he argue with logic like that? He grabbed his keys. Let us go. 20 minutes later, they stood outside Savannah's apartment building. The paint was still peeling. The neighborhood was still rough. Nathan still locked his car doors twice. 3 flights of stairs stretched above them, and he thought about Savannah climbing them every day with her pain. He thought about her doing it alone, without anyone to hold her arm or carry her groceries or just be there when she reached the top. Rosie knocked firmly on apartment 3B. Nathan's heart pounded in his chest. What if she did not want to see them? What if she had moved on? What if it was too late? The door opened. Savannah stood in the doorway. She was wearing sweatpants and an oversized sweater, her hair in a messy bun, her eyes red-rimmed from crying. She looked thinner again, 3 weeks of not eating properly, taking their toll. The glow she had gained over the past months had faded, replaced by the pallor of isolation and grief. When she saw the drawing in Rosie's hands, fresh tears spilled down her cheeks. "Miss Savannah." Rosie did not wait for an invitation. She threw her arms around Savannah's legs, nearly knocking her over with the force of her enthusiasm. "I made you a picture, and you need to see it right now, because it is very important." Savannah knelt down slowly, wincing as she lowered herself. Her pain was clearly bad today, but she took the drawing from Rosie with shaking hands, staring at it like it was the most precious thing she had ever received. "Rosie, this is—" Her voice broke. "This is beautiful." Rosie stood tall, her small face set with absolute certainty. "You are not broken, Miss Savannah. Daddy fixes broken people at his work. And he says broken just means you had something hard happen, but you are still here. And that makes you actually super strong, like a superhero." She took a breath. "So you are a superhero, okay. And superheroes do not stay away from their families because of silly grandparents who do not understand things." Savannah looked up, her eyes finding Nathan still standing in the hallway. Something passed between them, something raw and real and long overdue. "I dealt with the grandparents," Nathan said, quietly stepping forward. "Set firm boundaries. They have backed off. Their lawyer told them they did not have a case." He moved closer, his voice thick with emotion. "But Savannah, you need to understand something. You are not dragging us down. You have made our lives better." She started to protest, but he kept going. "Rosie loves you, and I—" He stopped. Then the words came pouring out, unstoppable. "I love you too. Not as a friend. As more than that. I think I have for a while now, but I was too scared to admit it. Too scared of messing up what we had. Too scared of moving on from Claire." Savannah's hand flew to her mouth. "But these past 3 weeks without you have shown me something important," Nathan continued. "Life is too short to waste time being scared." He took her hands in his. "I love you because of the way you ask Rosie about her day, like her answers are the most important thing in the world, because of how you light up when you talk about books, because you laugh at my terrible jokes even when they are not funny. I love you because you showed up to Rosie's school play with a heating pad hidden under your coat because you refused to miss it. Because you learned all the dinosaur names just to have conversations with a 6-year-old. I love you because 3 years ago I thought I would never feel this way again. I thought that part of me died with Claire. But you woke it up, not by replacing her, by showing me that love is not a finite resource, that my heart had more room than I knew." His eyes never left hers. "You asked me for a hug 7 months ago because you felt invisible. But Savannah, I see you. I have seen you since that first moment, and I want to keep seeing you, every day, for as long as you will let me." Savannah was crying openly now, but there was something different about these tears. They were not the desperate, hopeless tears of loneliness. They were the tears of someone who had been lost in the dark for so long they had forgotten what light looked like, and now it was streaming through the windows. "I love you too," she whispered. "I have loved you for months. I was just so scared." She took a shaky breath. "Scared that I would ruin everything. Scared that I was not good enough. That I would be too much trouble, that eventually you would realize what everyone else did, that I am damaged goods. Nathan's grip on her hands tightened. You are not damaged, he said firmly. You are human. You have been through trauma. That does not make you less than. It makes you remarkable for surviving it. Miss Savannah. They both looked down at Rosie, who was watching them with intense curiosity. Are you going to kiss my daddy now? Her tone was that of a scientist conducting important research, because in movies this is when people kiss. And it is kind of gross, but also kind of nice. And I think you should probably do it because you both look like you want to. Nathan and Savannah both laughed. Messy, emotional, relieved laughter that released all the tension of the past 3 weeks. Maybe not yet? Nathan said to Rosie, though his eyes never left Savannah's face. But soon. Okay, good, because I need time to prepare myself, Rosie announced, dramatically flopping onto Savannah's worn couch like she owned the place. It might be very shocking to my system, and I need to build up my tolerance. Savannah laughed then. Really laughed. That genuine full sound that Nathan had fallen in love with. Thank you, she whispered to him, for not giving up on me, for seeing past all the broken pieces. Nathan reached up and gently wiped the tears from her cheeks. There is nothing to see past, he said. The broken pieces are part of you, and I love all of you, every single part. They stood there in the doorway of her tiny apartment, Rosie chattering in the background about how she was an expert at love because she had watched at least 10 princess movies, and autumn sunlight streamed through the window painting everything gold. It was not a perfect moment. The apartment was tiny and shabby. Savannah's pain was visible in the careful way she moved. Nathan's life was complicated with work and single parenthood and lingering grief. Rosie would need time to adjust to whatever came next. But sometimes perfect is not what matters. Sometimes what matters is two people choosing to be brave enough to love despite fear, to trust despite past betrayals, to believe that broken things can create something beautiful when they are put together with care. 6 months later, Savannah moved in with Nathan and Rosie. The house felt different now. Her touches were everywhere, her books mixed with his on the shelves. A heating pad permanently plugged in by the couch for bad pain days. Photos on the refrigerator, the three of them at the zoo at Rosie's dance recital making cookies with too much frosting. Savannah's bad days still happened, but now she had someone to hold her through them. Nathan had learned to read her pain levels by the way she moved, could tell from across a room when she needed to sit down, when she needed medication, when she just needed to be held. Rosie had appointed herself official helper on bad days, bringing blankets, fetching snacks, sharing her stuffed animals for company, taking her responsibilities very seriously. 14 months after that October afternoon at the Copperleaf Café, they got married. The ceremony was small. Laurelhurst Park, the same park where they had had their first family outing. Autumn, of course. Maple leaves falling golden around them, the sun breaking through Portland's grey, exactly as it had the day they met. Savannah wore a simple ivory dress. Not red. That colour belonged to another chapter. Nathan wore a navy suit that Rosie had helped pick out after declaring every other option too boring. Rosie was the flower girl. She took her duties so seriously, she had practiced walking down the aisle 17 times, announcing each attempt with the solemnity of an Olympic athlete. Beth stood beside Savannah as her maid of honor. They had become close friends over the past months. Family. The guest list was small colleagues from Nathan's work, people from Savannah's support group who had cheered her on through the hardest months. No one from her biological family. But she was surrounded by chosen family, and that was enough. Richard and Eleanor had sent a card. Progress, Nathan supposed. After the vows, as Nathan kissed his bride, Rosie announced to everyone within earshot, finally, now we are officially a family forever. That night, after the small reception at their house, after Rosie had finally fallen asleep in her new bedroom that Savannah had helped decorate Nathan, and Savannah sat on a familiar bench outside the Copperleaf Café. Full circle, back where everything began. If you had walked away that day, Savannah said softly, watching the autumn leaves dance in the lamplight. I almost did, Nathan admitted. I almost stayed on my bench and minded my own business. Why did you not? He thought about it. Really thought about it. Because you looked the way I felt. Invisible. Forgotten. And I knew what that loneliness was like. I could not leave someone alone in it. Savannah took his hand. You did not just give me a hug that day. You gave me a family. Nathan squeezed her fingers. You gave us one too. Rosie and I, we were just surviving. You taught us how to live again. They sat in comfortable silence, watching leaves fall, both of them thinking the same thing. Sometimes the bravest thing you can do is ask for what you need. And sometimes the bravest thing you can do is say yes. Can you give me a hug, please? 7 words that changed everything. Because sometimes all it takes is one person willing to hold you when you are falling apart. One person who looks past your broken pieces and sees your whole heart. One person brave enough to say, you matter. If you are feeling invisible right now, please know this, your story is not over. Your pain does not define you. And somewhere out there is someone who will see you, really see you, and choose to stay. Friends, if this story touched your heart the way it touched mine, please do not just watch and walk away. Hit that subscribe button and join our channel family for more heartwarming stories that remind us we are all connected. Drop a heart in the comments if you believe in second chances and share this video with someone who needs hope today. Your support means everything to us and helps us bring more stories like this to you. Thank you for watching. Thank you for listening. Thank you for believing that stories like this matter. Until next time, remember, kindness costs nothing but means everything. And sometimes the people who save us are the ones we never expected.